What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel, and today I'm here to give you my full card predictions and betting breakdown for UFC 301 Pantoja versus Erceg. I'm going to keep this video quick. I'm keeping the yapping to a minimum so I can get this video out at a reasonable time. So on the fights that I don't need to elaborate on, I'm going to go by very quickly, so bear with me. If you want to hear a further explanation, you can always comment down and I'll kind of go into further detail. Let's start out with the first fight of the card, which is Alessandro Costa versus Kevin Borjas. I've been torn on this one. I'm just going to go with Kevin Borjas. I think he is the better striker. I think he's got the quicker hands. I like his straight punches. He's got good power. I know his cardio didn't look so good against Joshua Van, but I do think part of it had to do with the fact that he hurt Joshua Van, kind of chased the finish a little bit. Joshua Van came out like a wild man in rounds 2 and 3. And sure, Joshua Van landed a few takedowns, but Borjas showed improved takedown defense, and he's also very good at getting back up to the feet. I know Alessandro Costa, strong dude. Trains with Diego Lopez. I want to say Diego Lopez's main training partner, if not one of his best friends. He's definitely got the better jiu-jitsu, and maybe he's better at controlling his opponents than anyone Borjas has faced in the past, and that just might be the difference in this fight. But I do think Borjas has been showing improvements in his takedown defense. He is young. He does have quick hands, and he is a dog, and I like betting on dogs. I'll be honest, when I'm torn, typically I'll kind of look for a reason to lean towards the underdog, and that's Kevin Borjas, and I'm kind of a fan of Kevin Borjas, so I may be a little bit biased in this prediction. But when it comes down to it, he's got good straight punches. He's got good power. I love the way he rips to the body. Alessandro Costa has good striking. He is pretty powerful. He did hurt Steve Erceg, who is in the main event. But Alessandro Costa also did get knocked out by Amir Albazi. And Albazi, obviously is a fairly high-level fighter. He's not the greatest striker, and he doesn't have the greatest power. And Alessandro Costa took a couple of rounds to KO Jimmy Flick, and Jimmy Flick's just really not that good on the feet. And considering Alessandro Costa's skill set, I don't think it was that impressive of a performance. Now, it wasn't that unimpressive because he did really chew him up and clearly was beating the crap out of Jimmy Flick, but it kind of tells me that sometimes he can be a little bit too reluctant to hunt for that finish, and I think this may turn into a dogfight. I like Borjas. I think he is clearly the better striker. He's got the quicker hands, and I think this should be primarily a striking fight, and for that reason, I'm going to pick Kevin Borjas, and I'll get spicy with it. I'll say around 2 KO. I could also see it by decision, but I could also see Alessandro Costa going out there and looking like a minus 600 favorite, finding the takedowns because he is the bigger, stronger guy. He has a threat on the feet, and maybe he is just the more well-rounded guy, and that gets him the victory here. But I'm picking Kevin Borjas. Like I said, I might be a little bit biased, but I don't think his gas tank is that bad, and I just love the way he rips to the body. That's probably my bias. I love dudes that rip to the body. He does it very, very well. He's been showing improvements, and I'm going to move on to the next fight of the card, which is Ismael Bonfim versus Vinc Pichel. Vinc Pichel, I mean, he's a BJJ black belt. He's got pretty solid cardio. He's a vet of the game, but he is 41 years old, so I'm going to go with Ismael Bonfim. Although he lost to Benoit Saint-Denis, and that was a massive fraud check, we now know Benoit Saint-Denis is actually a pretty solid fighter in the rankings. And sure, he lost to Dustin Poirier, but we know Dustin Poirier is pretty good. Anyways, my point being, Ismael Bonfim isn't fully fraud checked, and I do think that he's a pretty solid striker. I mean, the way he beat Terrence McKinney was very impressive. I picked him against Terrence McKinney there, but at the same time, it's because I knew Terrence McKinney's technical striking is just horrible. I'm going to pick Ismael Bonfim here, and I'm actually going to pick him by decision. I think he'll have a lot of success early, hurt Vinc Pichel a couple of times, get tied up in some grappling. Vinc will survive, and then we'll get to the later rounds, and it's going to become pretty sloppy. I could also see a very early finish here from Ismael Bonfim. I think he is the better striker, the more dangerous striker. When it comes to the submission game, I think it's fairly even, but Ismael Bonfim, if it gets taken down to the ground, he's probably going to be the guy on top, landing the most damage, so submission could be the play here. I would lean towards a KO on Ismael. The only way he finds a submission in my head is if he hurts Vinc Pichel before, but maybe not, because he's just the stronger guy. He's much closer to his prime than Vinc 41-year-old Pichel. But Vinc Pichel, decent striking. I was rewatching his fight with Joaquim Silva because Joaquim Silva's on this card. He beat Joaquim Silva, striking a lot of that fight too. So, I mean, I think Vinc Pichel isn't that bad. Who did he fight last? Was it Mark Madsen? Exactly. He hasn't fought in so long. I did think that he actually could have beat Mark Madsen on damage, but that doesn't matter. I don't think Vinc Pichel's striking is that good, and I don't think it's going to bring Ismael Bonfim too many problems. I kind of want to pick Ismael by finish. Do I pick him by finish? I'll go by decision because I want to feel different. But I think he has a lot of success, hurts Vinc Pichel early, maybe works in a couple of takedowns, but beats him on the feet and wins a unanimous 30-27 decision where round 3 gets pretty, I don't want to say boring, but just pretty sloppy, where maybe Ismael's shooting takedowns and some sloppy grappling sequences, and Vinc is kind of still recovering from the first couple of rounds. We'll see. Anyways, let's move on to the next fight of the card. Dione Barbosa versus Ernesta Kareckaite. You know, I think Ernesto is a pretty solid underdog. She's almost 2-1 here, and she has very good volume. She seems like a pretty solid striker. She's rangy. She's pretty long, man. And I was really considering picking her because I saw her stuff 3 takedowns in the Contender Series, and that might be enough to kind of pick over Dione because Dione's lost twice outside of the UFC. But then you kind of break down those losses. Josiane Nunes, that's not a bad loss, especially earlier on in your career. Your striking defense isn't going to be as developed as it is now, and Josiane Nunes is the type of girl that will just go in there and trade with you, and she has the power to put your lights out. So I don't think that is that bad of a loss to have early on in your career. Outside of that, she lost to, I was just looking at the name of this chick, Jean Bishop. I think it's Jean Bishop. Anyways, that chick's now 7-0. She seems like a very solid fighter. That's a Jiu-Jitsu world champion, very high-level fighter, and outside of that, she beat Silva. I want to say that was 4 years ago, but that's still a very good win to have, and those 3 fights alone are some very high levels of competition. I will kind of just use that to take her over her opponent in Ernesto at the moment. Ernesto started out in kickboxing, but a lot of times that can mean that the takedown defense hasn't fully developed, and I could be wrong, but I do think that this is going to go one of 2 ways. Either Ernesto stuffed the takedowns and looks pretty good on the feet, or Dione finds takedowns and finds a submission. I'm going with the round 1 Dione Barbosa by submission. I think she is strong. She looks like a very, very strong lady. Her takedown entries, they're not the greatest, but I don't think they're that bad, and I think they'll be enough to get down Ernesto Kareckaite, who is a high-volume striker, but sometimes she might be a little bit too committed to the volume, and Dione can duck under and find some takedowns. But I'll say round 1 submission, Ernesto can end up smoking her, and maybe Dione has a little bit more success on the feet than we're kind of expecting here. But yeah, Dione, I love the levels of competition she's faced. I love the Silva win, and even though she's lost to some high-level fighters, at least she's been in there with them. So Dione Barbosa is the pick. I'm not betting her. So far, the only person I'm betting on this card is Kevin Borjas with a slight money line sprinkle. I got him at underdog money. So let's move on to the next fight of the card. Mauricio Ruffy versus Jamie Mullarkey. Mauricio Ruffy has good power. Jamie Mullarkey has a bad chin. Now, I like Jamie Mullarkey. I think he's got good takedowns. I think he's got good volume. I used to think he was a good prospect. Right around that time he was fighting Jalen Turner, I viewed that as a good prospect matchup, and I think I was kind of wrong. Jamie Mullarkey isn't horrible. The problem is just certain guys, they don't have the chin for their fighting style, and Jamie Mullarkey will kind of win at times, and all of a sudden he'll get sniped, and he's facing Mauricio Ruffy, who's shown some decent takedown defense on the Contender Series, stuffed 3 takedowns from a pretty decent grappler from my knowledge, and he's got power, and he's a pretty solid counter striker, and that can be a detriment to a guy like Jamie Mullarkey, because Jamie Mullarkey might be going out there with the volume, and then all of a sudden, a nice counter shot from Mauricio Ruffy kind of puts him down, discombobulates him, makes him lose the round. I'm going to go with the round 2 Mauricio Ruffy KO. I could see Jamie Mullarkey working in takedowns, and I think that's his best path to victory is by finding takedowns, but I do think he'll be the guy winning the minutes here. And by that I mean he'll be winning most of the time. I'll kind of parallel this to Trevin Giles versus Carlos Prates, where Prates can be that sniper counter striker off the back foot. Now, not that Mauricio Ruffy is that exact guy, but he can be that exact guy with some very solid counters, very powerful counters. People have compared him to some solid counter strikers with some solid powers, but he can snipe you. And Mullarkey could be the guy winning the minutes on the feet, and a little bit too confident like Trevin Giles, and then round 2 comes around, and then boom, Carlos Prates lines up that shot and knocks out Trevin Giles. I think this could be one of those types of scenarios. But if I'm Jamie Mullarkey, I'd say just go full takedowns, full clinch, similarly to how he did against that fighter he fought in Australia. Let me recap that. Let me get that guy's name. Was it John Makdessi? I think it was. Okay, it was John Makdessi. I'm trying to think. No, it was Francisco Prado. Was it Francisco Prado or John Makdessi? See, I'm forgetting fights now. I think it was Francisco Prado. I could be entirely wrong, but I mean, if I'm Jamie Mullarkey, I'm going out there and I'm just clinching. I'm shooting takedowns, and I'm not putting on a very fun fight because this is his career. You can't trust his chin in this matchup, and that's why I'm going with Mauricio Ruffy. It just makes sense. I think the fight should be on the feet. I think Mullarkey will entertain the striking, and for that reason, I think eventually he will get sniped and will kind of catapult himself into one of Ruffy's counters. But, I mean, minus 185, am I going to play that for Ruffy, who's coming into his debut against Mullarkey, who is well-rounded and with a perfect game plan? Probably can win this fight, and there is some unknowns about the game of Mauricio Ruffy. So, Ruffy's the pick. I'll say round 2 KO. Am I playing the money line? Probably not. I might play him by KO. That might be what I do, but we'll see. That would be kind of one of those things. If I'm itching to bet by the time that fight comes around, then I might play it. So let's move on to the next fight of the card, Joaquim Silva versus Drakkar Klose. I'm going with Drakkar Klose. I kind of wanted to pick Joaquim Silva because Drakkar Klose is a guy that he'll get hit, and he doesn't have the greatest chin, and he is a little bit unreliable. and he can get taken down, but I don't think Joaquim Silva is going to have too much success with his takedowns. Drakkar Klose has some good takedown defense, and he is good at getting back up to his feet. He is coming off a very solid slam KO over Joe Selecki. I think it was Joe Selecki. Anyway, slam KO, UFC Austin right after Cody Brunage did. I picked Cody Brunage, and Drakkar Klose back-to-back was pretty hyped. I think I had money on KO for both of them. Actually, maybe not Drakkar Klose. But anyways, I just like bringing up Cody Brunage because that's a pretty solid underdog pick that I'm proud of. But outside of that, Drakkar Klose, he should be the better striker. He should have the better volume. Joaquim Silva has been outstruck by some pretty bad guys. I didn't love his performance against Clay Guida. Clay Guida was outstriking him at times. Vinc Pichel, like I mentioned earlier on in this video, had way too much success on the feet against Joaquim Silva. Maybe Vinc Pichel is just a fraud check for Ismael Bonfim waiting to happen, but I kind of doubt that's the case. I just think Joaquim Silva's not that good. Although he clipped Arman Sarukian, which doesn't really make sense, I think it's partially because he didn't fear the takedown as much as Charles Oliveira did. And maybe it was just one of those weird scenarios where Arman Sarukian got way too overconfident. We'll see how this goes. I think Drakkar Klose will be able to pour on the volume. He will be able to stuff takedowns coming his way. He should have the better cardio, and he should be the more technical striker with the better volume. Like I said, his power isn't the greatest, but he can find a takedown here as Joaquim Silva's cardio isn't fantastic. It isn't something extremely reliable, and as this fight goes later, it could be a Drakkar Klose round 3 KO. So do I go with round 3 KO or do I go by decision? We'll say round 3 KO because I want to be fun. Round 3 KO, Drakkar Klose. I'm not playing him at anything over minus 185 because Joaquim can always snipe him, but I think the more technical striker with the better volume, with the better cardio, that should keep this fight on the feet. And Joaquim Silva might not even shoot a takedown, so we might not even have to worry about any of that. But if he does shoot a takedown, I don't think he's having much success with the grappling, and Drakkar Klose should be the better striker, as I have mentioned multiple times now. Not playing money lines, but I mean, Drakkar Klose finish might be a fun play. We'll see. Round 3 KO is going to be the pick. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Myektabek Orolbai versus Elves Brener. I want to pick Elves Brener. I do. He's fun, man. He is fun. He is a dog. He's got good cardio. He's got good submissions, probably good submission defense. But the takedown defense is a little bit concerning. But he also has solid striking, and he should be the better striker out of the two. And the thing about Myektabek Orolbai that I don't like is his striking defense. On the feet, he got clipped by Uros Medic. A couple other times on the regional scene, he's been clipped with massive shots. Now, he's taken on pretty good competition outside of the UFC. He's got good power in his hands as well. He is decently well-rounded, but I just don't think his striking is that good. I think, honestly, he looked bad against Uros Medic on the feet. I picked him there by round 2 submission, called that fight pretty damn well. But when it comes down to it, his striking is just a little bit tough. It's tough to really fully rely on. Now, he absolutely could find success because the thing about a guy like him is he's got a massive takedown threat, and combining that with his striking and considering the fact that he has good uppercuts, so that could be a scenario where he kind of almost level changes straight into an uppercut, kind of like that feint that Ihor threw against Alex Pereira, and he's thrown multiple times throughout his career. But I mean, he kind of has the takedowns to set up his striking a little bit. He's got good power on the feet, so I will go with him. I think he finds the takedowns, but Elves Brener might be pretty good at getting back up to the feet in this matchup. And if this is a primarily striking fight, I'm picking Elves Brener, and I think he can find a finish. I just think there will be enough grappling. I think this will be a pretty boring fight, and I'm not as sold on Myektabek Orolbai to beat Elves Brener as everyone is, and just as sold on Orolbai as everyone else is, because I don't love his striking, but I will say I love the fact that he is dropping down to the lightweight division, and this is a tough opponent. That's essentially what I'm getting at, just because Elves Brener, like I said, solid submission defense, solid submissions just in general, dangerous on the feet, and he'll be there in round 3 hunting for that KO. And if Myektabek Orolbai is having troubles holding him down or just finding the takedowns, that could be Myektabek Orolbai. A little bit drained on the feet. Arms tired from shooting takedowns, from holding down Elves Brener, and Elves Brener's coming out here landing big shots, knocking out Myektabek Orolbai in the later stages of this fight. But I do think that early Orolbai is going to be finding takedowns. And for that reason, I'm going with Orolbai. I think he's going to spam takedowns. This becomes a pretty boring fight. Could he find a submission? Yes, but I kind of just trust Elves Brener to survive. And that's kind of what concerns me, because Elves just survives and then he makes moments happen. I thought he lost to Zubaira Tukhugov, but outside of that, I mean, Elves Brener is a kind of tough guy to pick against. But Orolbai is that guy with that wrestling edge, with a grappling background, to where I don't see him getting submitted unless he gets hurt. I think he's pretty safe on top, and I think he should be able to control Elves, but he's had some trouble with controlling opponents in the past, and I'm not seeing this extremely high level of grappler that everyone else is, but he's extremely strong. He's young, and he's improving, and that's another thing that I want to mention. I can't believe how young this guy is. He's making improvements along with Elves, but I'm not going to trust in the guy that I think will get taken down, and I'm not going to trust Orolbai, who he's seeing go to decision multiple times. I'm breaking down this fight a little bit too much, but essentially what I'm saying, I wouldn't play Orolbai. I honestly wouldn't do it, although he can look like a minus 1,000 favorite. This could also be a scenario where he's looking like minus 2,000 up until round 3 hits. Elves Brener finds that moment on the feet, and they're on the feet for 30 seconds, and now Elves lands a big shot, and boom, the fight switched. It's changed. I'd put Orolbai around like a minus 140, minus 150 favorite because I think Elves is alive, but like I said, that's not going to be something that I am playing. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, Iasmin Lucindo versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I'm going with Iasmin Lucindo. Look, she's good striking. She's got good power. She's got some good submissions. She's got good grappling game. Karolina is a tricky opponent for a lot of people. She is a kind of great striker to some degree in women's MMA. I mean, great's a pretty strong word, but you kind of get what I'm saying, where she's tricky, she's long. She recently just beat Dione Belbita, if I'm not mistaken, but she's looked crafty from time to time, and I do think that if this is a pure striking fight, she has a really good chance, but I think there will be potentially some grappling mixed in here from Iasmin Lucindo, and Lucindo should be able to land the bigger shots on the feet. She has been a women's fighter that I've been impressed with multiple times throughout her career. I think her last performance wasn't extremely impressive to me. Let me make sure I actually watched that fight. Let me make sure. Polyana Vion. Do I remember that fight? Yeah, I actually do remember that fight. I swear I'm not capping. Holy crap. I was rewatching her fight with Iasmin Uruguay. Iasmin Uruguay is a pretty solid fighter, and they were scrapping. They were having a fun time. She can scrap. She can land big shots, and she is a dog, in my opinion, and I think that can really lead to her advantage in this matchup because even if she's losing on the feet, she can get scrappy. She can win on the feet. She probably might have the striking edge with the grappling threat mixed in with it. I think Karolina is old, getting up there in age, where we're going with Iasmin Lucindo. I'll say by decision. It's hard to predict the finish. I could see a KO. I could see a submission. But we're going with decision over Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who, although looked pretty good in her last performance, pretty decent in her last performance, I'm not going to trust her to come out here and beat Iasmin Lucindo, who I think is pretty decent. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Joanderson Brito versus Jack Shore. Underrated matchup. I'm excited for it, but I'm going with Joanderson Brito. I have a bet on him at minus 120, literally the best value you could have got him at. He opened up at minus 120. He said, all right, that's a little bit off. Brito is a good fighter. I know he lost to Bill Algeo, but Bill Algeo is the guy that gives people problems randomly. He's got very good volume. He's got decent takedown entries. Obviously, a very well-rounded, awkward guy because of his frame and just his high volume. Outside of that, Brito's had some very good performances. On the regional scene, he knocked out Chepe Mariscal, who looks like a very solid fighter in the featherweight division. Outside of that, there's a couple other performances where you're like, okay, he's legit. He's got a good submission game. Against Jonathan Pierce in his last matchup, he just submitted Jonathan Pierce. Now, I know David Onama just beat Jonathan Pierce, and that's a whole other thing. I picked David Onama there, so I'm not super high on that win over Jonathan Pierce, but at the end of the day, I mean, when you look at that fight, sure, he got taken down. He got controlled for 2 rounds. But the first round, he shot the takedown. That's just bad fight IQ. I'm going to be honest with you. But the difference between Jonathan Pierce, kind of a Jack Shore, although Jack Shore can out-scramble him, and I kind of hope he doesn't shoot takedowns and make the same mistake. It could happen. I don't think it will, but it definitely could happen. But when he's on top of a Jack Shore as compared to a Jonathan Pierce, he's a real featherweight. He's a strong guy, and Jack Shore's chin is not something I'm going to trust in this matchup. I know he's only lost once, and it's been by KO, but he got knocked out by Ricky Simone, who's really not that accurate of a striker, really not that good, kind of just been debunked in his last 2 fights against Mario Batista and Song Yadong, and those are solid fighters. Those are fighters I'm fairly high on, but still, that's not someone I want to see Jack Shore getting chinned by. And then taking on Joanderson Brito at 145 when he didn't even look that good. He didn't even look like he's really settled into his physique at 145. He's been taking some time off, so maybe he's going to be a little bit stronger, but I kind of doubt it. I don't think his frame is meant for 135 or 145, although he's going to have a speed advantage. He still gets clipped from time to time, and his striking defense, not that it's horrible, it's just not something I'm going to trust against Joanderson Brito, who also beat Diego Lopez, by the way. And Diego Lopez looks really good right now. Really, really good right now. He kind of was just on top control for a large part of the time, defending off submissions. But that's a good tool to have. That's something that I like to see, especially coming into this matchup. I think if he keeps us on the feet, he can find a knockout. I'll say a round 1 KO. How do I see this happening? I think it might get scrappy or Joanderson Pierce, man. What am I saying? Joanderson Brito lands an overhand right, kind of hurts Jack Shore at some point, finishes him off. Could be pretty brutal. I'll say a TKO type scenario after he drops him pretty bad. I just don't trust Jack Shore at 135, moving up to take on a hard, heavy hitter at the 145-pound division who is very well-rounded, very dangerous with his submission game as well. The cardio is on the side of Jack Shore. The speed is on the side of Jack Shore. But at the same time, it's not like Joanderson Brito has a lackluster takedown defense. He can get taken down, and sure, he may get out-scrambled at times. I just think he is well-rounded, and he finds ways to win fights, and I kind of trust that. I love his danger in both areas of the game. And like I said, the strength is going to be such a massive advantage for him here, along with just the power and the other physical tools. And I like his resume to a certain degree. There are flaws in it, but the Andre Fili KO, I mean, I like him, man. I think this gets scrappy at some point. I don't think Jack Shore has advanced enough striking defense to stay away from the power of Joannis and Brito. So we'll go Joannis and Brito at -120. I like the play. At -140, I kind of like that too. At -190, I think that's probably a little bit pretty fair. That's probably fair. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Paul Craig versus Cal Bahayo. I'm going with Cal Bahayo. I'll say round 3 KO after Paul Craig starts the gas. Cal Bahayo has been in some high-level jiu-jitsu tournaments. He's got a good submission game. He's very good at controlling people. Now, he's not Mr. Finishing Man. I'll be honest with you. He has decent striking, but doesn't seem to find finishes within the UFC. But this is a scenario where I can see him finding a finish. Paul Craig is not a good striker. He is extremely hittable. Cal Bahayo has quick hands, and I don't think it takes the heaviest hitter to knock out a Paul Craig. Now, maybe Paul Craig is live. I see some guys really, really pushing for the Paul Craig by KO play, and that is kind of funny to me. Maybe it happens. Maybe it happens because Paul Craig should have the submission advantage, but the issue is when he's on top against a high-level grappler like Cal Bahayo will probably find some big shots from on top. He will probably win the rounds from on top, and on the feet, he is the better striker. And if I'm Cal, I'm just keeping this on the feet and beating Paul Craig on the feet. And Paul Craig's chin's just not that good. His striking defense is not that good. He's cutting down a lot of weight to 185 more than likely. Maybe not that much, though, because I think he probably should have always been at the middleweight division. Now he's just disciplined enough to cut that weight, but I mean, cutting weight on a bad chin already, and did he just get knocked out or submitted? I think he got submitted by Brennan Allen. But anyways, he took some good damage in that fight. I don't trust the chin. I think Cal can find a finish here. I'll say round 3 after Paul Craig kind of starts to slow down. We might see some, early, this might even be an early KO. I don't know, but I don't trust Cal Bahayo's power because he finds ways to make fights go to a decision. But if I'm Cal, I'm keeping this on the feet. I'm finding big shots, and I'm knocking Paul Craig out. He beat Abus Magomedov, and everyone's going to say Abus, is his name Magomedov? Abus, whatever his name is. He beat Abus, and everyone's saying Abus is trash now. I don't think Abus is that bad, man. I mean, he's -200 over Rafael Alves, and just like a little sneak peek, I actually think that's pretty decent value. I don't think Rafael Alves is that bad or that good, and I think Abus he's pretty decent, man. He's pretty decent. He's got good striking. He's got good power. His cardio, it definitely is lackluster. I'll give you that, but Cal looked really good in round 1, 2, and 3. Just didn't have the power advantage. And Abus has shown a pretty good chin outside of when he slowed down and kind of quit against Sean Strickland. I won't say quit, but as soon as Sean Strickland kind of out-volumed him, that's when it kind of changed. But I think that's a more impressive win than people will give him credit for. That's essentially what I'm getting at there. Okay, let me circle back. I think he's winning this. I think he should have the grappling edge. Maybe not the pure jiu-jitsu edge, but I don't see him getting submitted. I think he knows enough of what he's doing. He's been in a lot of jiu-jitsu tournaments. I think he's a black belt, very high-level jiu-jitsu practitioner from what I understand. Probably has the wrestling advantage. He stuffs takedowns that are coming his way more than likely in this fight. And on the feet, like I said, he's the much better striker. Now, I mean, he does kind of leave that chin up in the air, but Paul Craig, sure, he has some power. I mean, he's just so much slower. He's so much slower. So Cal Bahayo's the pick. Round 3 KO. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Michel Pereira versus Ihor Potieria. I'm going with Michel Pereira, round 1 KO. He looked good against Michal Ojacek, who is a pretty decent fighter. He's welterweight now at the middleweight division, and we know there's a skill gap, but now Ihor is moving down from the light heavyweight division down to the middleweight division, and his cardio looked better than ever in his last performance, which I was not expecting whatsoever, considering he took that fight on short notice, down a weight class, cutting more weight, but maybe that's just the discipline he needed to get down to the weight class and then kind of increase his cardio and whatnot. He's dangerous. He's never a guy I really want to bet against because of that Rodolfo Bellato fight, the way he really almost basically did finish Rodolfo Bellato, but then he gassed out from nearly finishing Rodolfo Bellato and then got KO'd by Rodolfo Bellato. Crazy comeback, but at the same time, a lot of refs probably would have stopped that fight. Respect to the ref for letting that one go. But anyways, Michel Pereira is different. He's more skilled with the striking. He's going to try to put on a show for the home Brazilian crowd, but I do think that he'll find big shots. I don't think Ihor Potieria is that good of a striker. I think the grappling edge goes to Michel Pereira. I think, ironically, he has the advantage everywhere, and he is clearly the better striker, but probably striking is the most dangerous path to victory, because if you get scrappy with Ihor, and Ihor lands first, and you get rocked first, that's how you can lose this fight. I'll go with Michel Pereira. Obviously, I'm not playing that money line, but I'll probably play Michel Pereira by KO if it's... I might sprinkle it just to play something, to be honest with you. I'm not going to really play much on this fight, but round 1 KO is going to be the pick. If he could do it to Michal Ojacek, I think he can do it to Ihor Potieria, who's been knocked out by some fighters that I'm not extremely high on. Round 1 KO, pretty high confidence, not a good money line play. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Vitor Petrino versus Anthony Smith. I have a different take on this fight than a lot of other people. A lot of people are saying, oh, Vitor Petrino's a lock. I think Anthony Smith is tremendous value. This is going to be a hot take. Just hear me out. I almost picked Anthony Smith. I was kind of thinking about it, but then I kind of realized, all right, I'm being a little bit delusional. But what I will tell you about Vitor Petrino, this guy is low volume at times, man. Against Modestas Bukauskas, he was kind of chilling there for a large period of time until he clipped him and obviously found the finish. Against Tyson Pedro, a little bit of lower volume. And if Anthony Smith is kind of going out there, pitter-patting a little bit, and Vitor Petrino's not finding these big shots because he is not technical. Anthony Smith is arguably better everywhere. He's arguably a better striker. He's arguably a better wrestler. He's arguably a better jiu-jitsu guy. Because you look at Vitor Petrino, he gets on top of guys and he looks at his corner. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know how to submit people. And sure, he finds submissions and whatnot, and I'm sure he's going to find some. But he's so raw, guys. His striking, it's just not good. He has every physical advantage in the book. Outside of cardio, I'd say it's probably pretty even. But he's got the power advantage and he's got the strength advantage. And that's going to probably be enough for him to win this fight. I think he probably finds the bigger shots on the feet. Probably works in a couple of takedowns and wins maybe a couple of rounds this way. But I think this fight's going to be close. I could also see him smoking Anthony Smith. Let me get that clear. But if this turns into a type of fight where he's kind of slow in round 1 like he was against Tyson Pedro, like he was against Modestas Bukauskas, I think Anthony Smith wins that fight where Vitor Petrino is being passive on the feet. I'll just be honest with you, but I think at some point there will be some urgency, and I do like the finishing potential on the side of Vitor Petrino. I am playing Anthony Smith. I think this is really, really good, tremendous, shocking value. Anthony Smith was fighting underratedly, very competitively with Khalil Roundtree. And Khalil Roundtree is a guy that a lot of people are picking over Jamal Hill. Now, I think that is a mistake. I think Jamal Hill is probably going to run through him, but Khalil is still a pretty high-level fighter in the light heavyweight division, and the best fighter we have seen Vitor Petrino fight is Tyson Pedro, and that was Tyson Pedro immediately retiring after that fight. Immediately. And Tyson Pedro's not that good of a fighter, or that good of a striker. Maybe you can argue he's a little bit more dangerous on the feet and a tougher stylistic matchup on the feet than Anthony Smith is, because of Anthony Smith's chin issues. But I'm telling you guys, like, Vitor Petrino at times just looks so raw to me, where I'm like, I could just see Anthony Smith pouring on volume, working in takedowns, clinching up, making this a boring fight, or just fighting at range and somehow beating Vitor Petrino in a very weird, low-level looking fight, because that's the thing about the light heavyweight division. There is such a drop-off outside of the rankings, and even like outside of the top 10. And I'd say Anthony Smith is definitely in that drop-off category, but like outside of the rankings, the guys that Vitor Petrino has been fighting are just so absolute trash. Now, he's big. He's strong. He's been improving. He's got good power. He's got a good submission game. So for that reason, I'm going with him. But I'll say by decision, I'll say close. And I think there's going to be like a round 1 or round 2 where he's just being a little bit too low in volume, doesn't find the big shot of the round to kind of sway the damage in his favor, and Anthony Smith steals that. And then we're going to see a round 2, maybe round 1 or 2, whatever it is. I think the first 2 rounds are going to be close, and then maybe Vitor Petrino or maybe Anthony Smith has a cardio advantage. I want to pick Anthony Smith, but I can't trust his chin. I didn't like his last performance. I'm betting Anthony Smith, like I said, and just let me know if I'm tripping, because I don't think I'm tripping. He's only lost to pretty high levels of competition. Say what you want about Johnny Walker. That's a decent fighter. I know Ryan Spann did just get cooked by Bogdan Guskov, but you saw what he did to Bogdan Guskov in round 1. Took him down and had him in some very bad positions. And then round 2, he got clipped with some big shots. But you kind of get what I'm getting at. Like, Anthony Smith is not bottom of the barrel. He is not the Tyson Pedro. Not that Tyson Pedro is that bad. But we're talking about a Tyson Pedro that gasses out after the first round, who seemingly had a decent amount of cardio in rounds 2 and 3 because of how low volume some Vitor Petrino fights are. But Modestas Bukauskas is not that good. The Polish guy he fought, Marcin Prachnio, not that good. Really not that good. And I know Devin Clark just lost to Marcin Prachnio, but you kind of get what I'm getting at. It's just these guys outside the light heavyweight rankings are so bad that this could just be a massive step up of competition that we don't even realize. And that's why I want to pick Anthony Smith, but I'm not going to, because I see the minus 500 and it makes me feel delusional, and I don't have those type of balls. But I am playing Anthony Smith. I have said this multiple times now. And let me give Vitor Petrino some credit. He has been improving. Although I worry about his control time, because fights with Anton Turkalj, where that was way too competitive, he's giving up so many positions, he has been improving. And he is kind of learning how to use his physical mass a lot more. He is young, and like I said, he will be improving. He's learning how to use his power. He's learning how to use his strength. Against a vet like Anthony Smith, on paper, bro, Smith wins this fight, but we'll see how this one actually turns out. I'll go with close decision, Vitor Petrino. Confidence, 51%. I am so low confidence on this. I could be tripping. Vitor could run through him. Or we could see Anthony Smith look really good against Vitor Petrino. Maybe not. I don't think he's going to smoke Vitor. I think if he wins, it'll be close, competitive, where Vitor might have a couple of moments swinging big shots. But I think Vitor is massively being overhyped in this matchup. Let's move on to the next fight of the card. Not Anthony Smith. Jose Aldo versus Jonathan Martinez. I'm going with Jose Aldo. I understand the Jonathan Martinez pick, and I might be a little bit delusional here. I might be biased. There's a couple of picks in this card where I might be a little bit biased, but I don't think I am because I'm looking at Jose Aldo and I'm rewatching his fights, and Jose has some solid leg check defense, leg kicking ability to defend leg kicks. Anyways, that's the main part of Jonathan Martinez's game, and outside of that, I don't know if he's that fantastic of a striker. Sure, he can maintain range pretty well, but he's been knocked out by Davey Grant. I don't trust that chin. And not only that, he was dropped pretty badly by Vince Morales. And I loaded up on Jonathan Martinez in that matchup because I knew he is the much better striker, much better at maintaining range. I've been on the Jonathan Martinez train for, a decent amount of time now. I picked Said Nurmagomedov over him, and Said, in my opinion, probably won that fight. He definitely did win that fight. Maybe not, but I thought he won that fight anyways. Not Jonathan Martinez, Said. Jonathan Martinez, good at maintaining range, and if he just kind of plays that game where it's a leg kick, run away, jab, leg kick, run away. I mean, he probably wins this fight. Do I see that being the case? No, and I also could see Jose Aldo backing him down at one point and landing big shots. I think this fight is going to go where Jonathan Martinez is probably landing the more volume, but Jose finds the bigger shots, and he rocks him at times, maybe drops him once, hurts him in the second round, lands a couple low kicks of his own. I think this will be a close fight. I'm going to go with Jose Aldo by decision by landing the bigger, more impactful shots. And I don't know. I just don't trust Jonathan Martinez's leg kicks to have the same impact that they did against Cub Swanson and, oh my gosh, Adrian Yanez. And Adrian Yanez's leg kick defense has never really been proven to be good. Cub Swanson, that was a very impressive performance, but Cub Swanson does not happen to be Jose Aldo. And like Jose Aldo, before losing to Merab, by the way, he did the best against Merab, against anyone we have seen so far. He had a pretty solid resume, beating Marlon Vera, beating Rob Font. Prior to that, who did he beat? Was it Pedro Munoz? He beat Pedro Munoz. Good low kick defense is my point. And I think he's got the better boxing. He's been training boxing, so his hands are probably going to be pretty damn good. He's going to be pretty crisp. It's not like he's been laying on the couch for however long. If you look at his physique, it's been looking good. He's intense. Now, maybe he's looking to retire after that fight, and that is kind of concerning, but I know it's a long layoff. At least he's been staying active with boxing, and I think the low kick defense is something that is just a really solid part of his game that will bring a lot of success for him in this matchup. I could be biased. I really could be biased here. I don't think I am because I think that is a pretty solid breakdown to it, and I know Aldo is old, but like, dude, he hasn't looked washed to me yet. And I watched the boxing match with Jeremy Stevens. I don't think boxing is his strong suit, but he didn't look half bad either, and I think he kind of wasn't really extremely committing to shots. And not only that, I just feel like he's kind of used to more of a, he's just not naturally in a boxing element. I feel like I'm just yapping. I'm just yapping at this point, but the low kick defense will be there. And I think he's got the better boxing. I think he's got the better overall striking. He can land low kicks of his own. He's got good cardio. He's got great takedown defense. Jonathan Martinez won't shoot takedown, or he won't find takedowns if he looks for them. Not that he really does, but that's just something to consider. I think on the feet, Jose finds the bigger shots, potentially finding a KO. I like the finishing potential on his side. If Jonathan Martinez leg kick KOs this guy, I would be shocked. Shocked. And I would just immediately say Jonathan Martinez is one hell of a striker, and he is a really, really good fighter. But I think Aldo, like I said, nullifies the leg kicking game. And outside of that, we've seen Martinez get clipped multiple times, and I can't trust that chin. I think Aldo finds big shots, does more damage, and wins this fight. I'll keep it as simple as that. I will stop yapping and repeating myself, and let's move on to the main event, which is Alejandro Pantoja. Let me add this too. I'm not going to be loading up on Jose Aldo. I will be sprinkling him because he is an underdog, but so far, not betting this card too heavily. Let's move on to the main event, which is Alejandro Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. I'm going with Alejandro Pantoja. I understand the Steve Erceg pick because if you watch back some Alejandro Pantoja fights, there are moments where I'm thinking if Moreno or Royval stuffs these takedowns, they can find a TKO or they can really batter him this round. Now, my kind of issue with that is I think, or in this matchup, why I'm not as concerned for it, actually I am pretty concerned with it because I think Erceg may be the best counter grappler out of all these guys. I think he's had some wrestling success in Australia from my understanding. He's shown good takedown defense. He's shown good wrestling of his own, some good scrambles. He's a BJJ black belt, but we'll see how legit that is in this matchup. Pantoja's like a 3rd degree level black belt, something like that. High level black belt is my point, and he's legit, but he can be boring at times. Last fight he was a little bit boring. At times in the Moreno fight, it could have gotten a little bit scrappy, turned into an even better fight than it already was, and then he kind of grappled, slowed the round down, but let me say this, he's not a boring fighter. People may have forgotten, but this guy likes to go out there and he likes to scrap. And when he gets rocked, it's not like he's done. It's like he recovers, he shoots takedowns, he gets back into it, and he'll start scrapping again. That's what I kind of like here. If he gets rocked and he's getting hurt, he'll shoot takedowns, he'll chill in the clinch, and then he'll come back. And I think there will be a moment eventually where even if he's getting rocked a couple of times, he's going to hurt Steve Versag. And when he hurts Steve Versag, he has more options. He has the ability to submit Steve Versag. He has the ability to find takedowns there. And he has the ability to just not flatline, but just straight out find a TKO on Steve Versag. What I don't like about Steve Versag, and I've never really liked about his striking, is he just looks so stiff at times. Even against Matt Schnell in that KO sequence, he looks so stiff. And Matt Schnell is not that good. But Matt Schnell also did hurt Pantoja. People forget about that, and I do kind of want to bring that up because everyone kind of mentions Matt Schnell as this guy that, oh, he just sucks. Matt Schnell's horrible, blah, 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 blah. Imagine taking Matt Schnell to the 2nd round and then KO. Matt Schnell has had success against some very good fighters, and I think he's kind of an underrated fighter at this point just because he's been KO'd by a lot of flyweights. Like, he's a pretty decent placeholder. He has a decent skill set, and he is kind of tough. But I think Versag's and Pantoja's performances over him are a little bit more, impressive than some people will say. I mean, we saw Royval get hurt badly by Matt Schnell, dropped and put on his back, and then finding a submission. But we've seen Matt Schnell have a lot of success against some high-level opponents, and I'm not going to fault either one for getting tagged up that much. Now, what I will say is Steve still looks stiff. Like, I'm not going away from that take. He looks stiff with his striking. He might be the more better striker at range, but Steve will trade in the pocket, and he even mentioned it in his post-fight interview. His striking defense is not that good, and his head movement is really not that good, and I think that's why I'm going with Pantoja. Although Pantoja gets hit too, he probably hits harder out of the two, and if they're trading in the pocket and Pantoja lands eventually, when Steve Versag's rocked, I'm just thinking Pantoja is a little bit more dangerous, and he always has the grappling to go to. I haven't even mentioned the grappling in this fight. I think Steve is the better striker. Let me make that clear. At range, he's going to have the low kicks, which will probably benefit him massively. But if you watch that one, or if you look at that one face-off photo, like in Rio above the mount, I don't know where that was, but Versag looked like 5 inches taller than him. I'm like, holy crap, I might pick Versag. But then you watch the face-offs where they're wearing the same shoes. Versag's probably like 2, maybe 3 inches taller than him. It was kind of crazy, that one photo. I was like, all right, am I picking Versag all of a sudden? But no, I don't think that's going to be the case. Versag seems like a guy with 5 rounds of cardio. I won't lie to you. Like, certain guys, I watch their fights and I just kind of see the way they compose themselves and like how calm they look, and it just seems like, okay, this guy could go 20 rounds. I said that about Royval, and that's why I was really considering Royval against Pantoja. That didn't really work out, but you saw in rounds 4 and 5, he looked great against Pantoja. Maybe not great because he got taken down, but he looked fresh. Against Moreno, he just went 5 rounds in elevation, had good cardio. Versag's one of these guys that I think has probably 5 rounds of really solid cardio, but we will see how that kind of plays out. I don't think he's going to be able to keep this fight at range for long enough to win against Pantoja. I think knowing Versag, he will trade in the pocket, and I think he will get clipped eventually, and I think he will get finished. My official pick is going to be, Steve Versag winning round 1, kind of stuffing takedowns, maybe getting taken down towards the end of round 1, landing a couple of low kicks, doing the more damage, winning maybe more of the minutes. But then all of a sudden, I'll say Steve Versag, maybe not, what am I saying all of a sudden? Let me try to retrace that. I'm going to say that Steve Versag's winning at range, gets taken down once in round 1, and then round 2 comes around, and then they trade in the pocket. Steve Versag maybe has some success. There's a couple of exchanges in the pocket, and all of a sudden, I'll say like midway / early round 2, they trade in the pocket. Pantoja lands a big hook, kind of rocks Steve Versag, lands a couple of more follow-up shots, scrambles around the back, finds a rear naked choke, round 2, while Steve Versag is rocked. I'm not really confident on the pick. I'll say like 52% chance Pantoja wins. A lot of people are like really high on one side or the other in this matchup. I'm kind of at the point where I'm low confidence on Pantoja because I recognize Steve Versag has good takedown defense, and there are multiple moments in Pantoja fights where if his opponent is able to stuff the takedown and keep it striking, they can find KOs in the later rounds. Specifically, I want to say round 4 and 5, Royval against Pantoja. I want to say maybe it was round 5, Moreno versus Pantoja, because he does slow down and he is all heart and he is really tough. And I kind of do trust that here, but at the same time, if he's not finding those takedowns, I mean, that cardio might look worse than we've ever seen it. But this is the last thing, not the last thing, because I always like to yap, but This is one thing that I do want to mention. Pantoja said he was really, really sick in his last performance against Royval, which is why he was slowing down pretty badly in rounds 4 and 5. He said he blacked out for a moment, and it wasn't because he got hurt. He said it was because he was just completely sick and just blacked out of being tired, overworking himself. So that was partially why he said he got this boring. I think since this is in Brazil, in his hometown, maybe it's not his hometown, but in Brazil, his home country, he's going to want to make this a scrappy, entertaining fight, and I think there will be entertaining moments, and I think it'll get wild enough to where Pantoja can land a big shot, potentially finding a TKO, and potentially submitting Steve Erceg. And I know Steve Erceg looks like he has a very bad chin, and he doesn't look tough, but the dude's tough. Like, I'll give him full credit for it, but he's getting tagged by Matt Schnell. I think Pantoja mixed in with the grappling threat, and he can find takedowns. I've completely just ignored this fact throughout my breakdown so far. He can find takedowns. I think he will find takedowns. Maybe not at will the same way he did against Moreno. It's not Moreno. I keep meaning to say Royval, but saying Moreno, it's just Brener fucks me up, I guess. But I think Royval has worse takedown defense than Steve Erceg. And Erceg probably has better scrambles back up to the feet. And he can have success with his grappling if he catches Pantoja in a weird scramble. But Pantoja's grappling so good. He's so good at scrambling out of bad positions when he put in them. I was watching back his fight with Askar Askarov, and some of his scrambles, although he lost that fight, was just great. Great. And I have a lot of praise for this guy. It took a guy like Figueiredo to kind of beat him and really hurt him on the feet. Figueiredo's more of a striker. I think Pantoja's chin is just good, and I don't trust Erceg to find a finish. I like the finishing potential of Pantoja. I like the fact that I've seen him go 5 rounds. I like the fact that I've seen him beat both Moreno and Royval, who are very high-level fighters. Regardless of what you kind of think of Moreno now after that Royval fight, that didn't look like a high-level version of Moreno, but that Moreno that Pantoja fought was a very tough Moreno to fight, and Moreno with a decent bit of momentum. So we're going to go with Pantoja. Round 2 submission after hurting Steve Erceg at the fight on the feet at some point. But I could also see this being, I don't think it's going to be a snooze fest the way that a lot of people think this is going to be a snooze fest. I don't think so. I could be completely wrong, though. Completely wrong, though. Steve Erceg's takedown defense really isn't that good. This could be a snooze fest, so I take that back. Pantoja's the pick, low confidence. I've been yapping for too long now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.